Hello, welcome to Story Circles. Here's a story about my favorite tree. It's an Anne and Jan adventure and it's called Under the Samaan Tree. It was Friday after school and Jan was over at Anne's home. They were neighbours and best friends. In the kitchen, the girls were gathering their supplies in preparation for their mini camp in the field just 200 feet away. They were on a quest. Their science teacher had given the class an assignment to find out if their neighborhoods were the natural habitats of any wild creatures. Anne and Jan planned to spend the early hours of the night scouting around at the edges of the field where there were many trees and a thick undergrowth. The girls were quite used to taking long walks in the area, but Anne's dad had said no camping out for the night. And the other parents had all agreed. They could camp out until 9, but the mums and dads would be in the front porch within earshot and able to cast a glance from time to time. Moreover, Anne's older brother Nick, who was 13, would walk them over and return to accompany them back home. "We're 10 already," Anne exclaimed. Jan added, "Yeah, we're old enough, smart enough, and wise enough to handle this." "Yes," Anne said. "For example, we prepared our dinner." They looked with appreciation at the chicken sandwiches, cheesies, plum chow, and mandarins, all packaged to go. "And we remembered to pack the picnic blanket and the bug spray," Jan said, "and a flashlight." "Yes," Nick added pointedly, "and I lent Anne my fancy new digital camera, so you can actually get good pictures." The girls glanced at each other, trying not to roll their eyes. "And we have binoculars too," Jan said. She had borrowed her dad's. With the sun a brilliant orange spread across the land, the trio walked over to the field. "This is my favorite tree," Jan said. They stopped near the grand old samaan, whose branches spread across 100 feet like a giant umbrella. It was close to where they stood. The girls dropped their bags on the ground and ran to opposite sides of the tree. The bark was mottled brown and grey, and its ridges were rough against their skin. Laughing, they stretched their arms around the trunk, trying to reach each other's hands. It was an old game they could never win. Nick said, "Just so you know, you're hugging a death tree." The girls' arms slowly fell to their sides. "Look here." He pointed to a splotch of reddish brown, about 3 feet in diameter, that crossed from the roadside to the hard, dry season earth of the field. "What do you think this is?" They gazed at the patch, but neither Anne nor Jan answered. Nick's face was somber. "Slave blood. Mr. Renwick told me." "What?" The girls gasped. They both knew of the old man who lived in the village and did odd jobs to make money. "My mum said it's tree sap," said Jan. "No, it's not." He shook his head. "You never see the sap drip." "I wondered about that," said Jan. "This land was Taino," Nick continued. "Then the Spanish came, killed most of the Tainos, brought in the French, who came with people they'd made into slaves. Then England came, and more slaves, all of them making truckloads of money. But not the slaves. If they tried to run away or if they protested, guess what? What? The girls asked. Nick drew his thumb across his neck. They all looked solemnly from the rust-brown splotch to the branch high above. Lush ferns and overgrown orchids hung 20 feet down. They hanged slaves who rebelled. All this land was a sugarcane plantation. Mr. Renwick said a man called Spirit was hung right here 200 years ago. 200 years ago, his sister said. That's like yesterday, Jan shuddered. Slave ghosts live here, he replied. The blood still drips. Anne looked up, skeptical. Deep, deep into the night, Nick added. Nobody sees, but it does happen. He slapped at a mosquito on his ankle. Lucky for you, I'll be back at 9. He began walking away. Later. The insects were out. Jan brought out the repellent, and they both applied it liberally to their arms and legs. Too bad we don't have any ghost spray, said Jan. We can see our parents from here. We shouldn't worry. Let's get our research done. They looked at the picnic basket. Jan said, Eat first. They spread the blanket under the tree, the furthest they could get from the dark red splotch. Like busy ants, they set to work devouring their little feast. Then Anne brought out the camera. She photographed the bachaks that had wandered over to their crumbs. Jan laughed. Those white egrets too, just sitting on the grass. Snap! A squawking overhead called their attention. The parrots were doing their evening flyby, hunting mangoes and forest fruit. Snap! We might see frogs and crickets. Listen, you can hear them, said Jan. I'm not taking pictures of any frogs. Anne's voice rose in indignation. Shh, Jan whispered. We don't want to scare away the creatures. Let's go to that side of the field. They walked across the grass, chatting. Mum said we might see an alligator because the river runs close by. She said we have to keep our eyes on the ground, said Anne. My mum said watch out for snakes, Jan said. She's so scared of snakes she'd whack off their heads even if they're harmless. That is so typical, said Anne. I hope we see one. And a manikou. I heard they eat the seeds from the Samaan tree pods. As dusk deepened, lights from the houses around came on. Occasionally a car passed by. The girls thought it best to keep quiet and be on the lookout. Jan checked the bushes with her binoculars. A sudden movement revealed the largest, greenest lizard she'd ever seen. She touched Anne's arm and pointed. Anne held up her camera and caught a shot of the emerald green iguana just before it darted off. The flash had worked. They looked at the startlingly clear image on the camera. Beautiful. Yes, but he's got a grumpy face, Jan giggled. Then a loud clanking began. The dragging, jangling sound was coming from the direction of the Samaan tree. Anne and Jan stood still. Each knew what the other was thinking. Seconds felt like minutes. Then the noise stopped, and they heard only the insects. The girls scanned the area, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. A runner wearing reflective shoes went past. Anne, what made that noise? Jan asked. Only one way to find out. Anne slung the camera around her neck, and the girls headed off to the old tree. Their blanket was still there, with the picnic bag. No sign of disturbance, Well, we know it wasn't an escaped dog, Jan said. Anne grabbed the flashlight and put it on. Sounded more like it was on the road and not on the earth. Let's go around this way. She shone the light on the ground. The girls saw the damp red spots at the same time. The drops glistened against the large rust-brown splotch. It's blood, Jan whispered. Let's go home, Anne said. They snatched up their things and ran to Anne's house. The dads were in the porch playing a game of chess. Anne's dad asked, "What's the matter? Did something happen?" At that moment, loud laughter erupted from the garage. Nick emerged wearing his dark blue bedsheet like a gown and holding the heavy chain they used to padlock the back gate. He chortled, "Aha! This is so funny. I can't believe you fell for that." Anne was mad, but she kept her cool. "I can't believe you're so silly. A history lesson is okay, but we don't need a live demonstration." Nick was still laughing his head off when their mothers came out. The girls recounted what had happened that evening. "We did get some great pictures, though," said Anne. "We only got scared when we saw red paint under the tree," said Jan. "Red paint?" Nick seemed puzzled. "Don't pretend you don't know," exclaimed Anne. "Okay," said Nick. "You must have seen fresh drops of sap." His bedsheet slipped to the ground, and he lay aside the chain. "I don't even have any paint." Jan held out her index finger. "Look." Jan's dad came over. "Not paint." He sniffed the substance and looked grimly at the girls. "Please go scrub your hands."